Evelyn hurried down the steps of the deserted subway station, her footsteps echoing in the stale air. She glanced at her watch and cursed under her breath. The last train was due in 5 minutes, and she couldn't afford to miss it. As she reached the platform, she noticed the flickering lights, casting eerie shadows on the walls, and an unsettling feeling crept over her. The station seemed unusually quiet, devoid of the usual hustle and bustle, making her question if she was truly alone. Evelyn sat on the cold metal bench, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease. A sudden movement caught her eye, and she turned to see a man standing at the far end of the platform. He was dressed in ragged clothes, his face obscured by shadows. He didn't move or speak, just stood there, staring at her. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she averted her gaze, hoping the train would arrive soon. The distant rumble of the approaching train was a relief to Evelyn, though it did little to calm her nerves. She stood up as the train screeched to a halt, its brakes hissing like a cornered snake. The doors slid open with a mechanical groan, revealing an empty carriage. She hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting back to where the man had been standing, but he was gone. With a deep breath, she stepped into the train, the doors closing behind her with a final, echoing thud. Evelyn walked down the length of the carriage, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Each car she passed through was devoid of life, amplifying her sense of dread. She finally settled into a seat, clutching her bag tightly. The train jolted forward, and as it picked up speed, she noticed the lights inside the carriage flickering sporadically. Every so often, the train would pass through a tunnel, plunging her into complete darkness before the lights struggled back to life. As the train sped through the dark tunnels, Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. She glanced around and froze. A figure sat at the other end of the carriage, a man wearing a hood that obscured his face. She hadn't seen anyone enter, and the man hadn't been there moments ago. He slowly lifted his head, revealing hollow, sunken eyes that seemed to pierce through the dim light. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as the man began to smile, a slow, sinister grin spreading across his face. Panic surged through Evelyn as she bolted from her seat, rushing towards the nearest door. She frantically pressed the emergency stop button, but nothing happened. The train continued its relentless journey through the darkness. She pounded on the door, screaming for help, but her cries were swallowed by the clattering of the train. She turned back, only to see the man now standing, his twisted smile never wavering as he slowly advanced towards her. With no escape in sight, Evelyn grabbed a metal pole for support, her eyes locked on the advancing figure. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The man stopped, his grin fading into a look of eerie calm. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, his voice a chilling rasp. Evelyn's grip tightened on the pole as the lights flickered once more, casting grotesque shadows on his face. The train lurched violently, throwing her off balance, and she fell to the floor, the man standing over her. Evelyn struggled to her feet, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man pointed towards the darkness outside the window. "This train ... it never stops. It takes those who are lost, those who have nowhere else to go." Evelyn's eyes widened in horror as the realization dawned on her. She was trapped on a ghost train, destined to ride the endless tunnels forever. The man stepped back, his form dissolving into shadow as the train plunged into darkness once more. As the train continued its relentless journey, Evelyn slumped into a seat, her mind racing. She stared out the window at the passing darkness, realizing she was doomed to ride this spectral train for eternity. The lights flickered one last time, and in the brief moments of darkness, she thought she saw other shadowy figures in the carriage, souls lost just like her. When the lights came back on, she was alone again, the oppressive silence pressing down on her as the train roared into the void. On a chilly autumn evening, 5 friends Alice, Brian, Claire, David, and Emily arrived at the infamous Maplewood Manor. The manor, rumored to be haunted, stood at the end of a long, winding road surrounded by dense woods. As they approached the manor, The air grew colder, and an unsettling silence fell over the group. They pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly as it swung open. The interior was dark, and a musty smell filled the air. Using their flashlights, they saw dust-covered furniture and cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. Every step they took echoed through the empty halls. The friends entered the grand hall, where a massive chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals coated in dust. The walls were lined with old portraits, their eyes seemingly following the group. A large, ornate mirror stood at the far end of the hall, reflecting their anxious faces. Brian noticed a draft coming from behind a bookshelf. Together, they pushed the bookshelf aside to reveal a hidden door. With a mixture of excitement and fear, they opened the door and found a small, dimly lit room filled with old books and strange artifacts. As they explored the hidden room, the temperature suddenly dropped. Claire screamed as she felt a cold hand brush against her shoulder. They turned to see a ghostly figure of a woman in a long, tattered dress, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. David found an old journal on a dusty shelf. As they read it, they discovered it belonged to the ghostly woman, named Elizabeth. The journal detailed her tragic life and how she was betrayed and killed by her husband in the very manner they stood in. Determined to help Elizabeth find peace, the friends decided to hold a séance. They gathered in the grand hall, lit candles, and joined hands. Alice, who had some experience with the supernatural, led the séance, calling out to Elizabeth's spirit. During the séance, a dark, malevolent spirit appeared, identified as Elizabeth's husband. The air grew thick with malevolence, and the candles flickered violently. The friends felt a suffocating presence as the dark spirit tried to break their circle. Alice recited an incantation she found in Elizabeth's journal, and the friends repeated it together. The dark spirit screamed and writhed in pain as the incantation took effect. Finally, with a burst of light, the dark spirit was banished from the manor. With the dark spirit gone, Elizabeth's ghost appeared one last time. She smiled gratefully at the friends and thanked them for freeing her. As dawn approached, her spirit slowly faded away, finally at peace. As the sun rose, the friends left Maplewood Manor, feeling a sense of accomplishment and relief. The manor, now free of its dark presence, seemed less foreboding in the morning light. They walked back to their car, ready to return home. On the drive home, the friends reflected on their experience. They had faced their fears and helped a trapped spirit find peace. The haunting memory of Maplewood Manor would stay with them, a testament to their courage and unity. In a quaint countryside village, a group of friends receive an invitation to spend the weekend at a mysterious manor on the outskirts of town. Excited for an adventure, they set off on a sunny afternoon, unaware of the horrors that await them. As they approached the manor, a sense of foreboding washes over the group. The once grand estate is now a shadow of its former glory, its windows boarded up and ivy creeping up the walls. Despite their unease, they press on, eager to explore. Once inside, the friends split up to explore the decaying halls and forgotten rooms of the manor. Dust hangs heavy in the air as they wander through corridors lined with faded portraits and moth-eaten tapestries, each step echoing through the empty halls. In the attic, they uncover a hidden room filled with ancient relics and forgotten treasures. Amongst the dusty artifacts, they find a mysterious book bound in worn leather, its pages filled with strange symbols and cryptic incantations. Intrigued by the book's contents, they decide to conduct a séance to communicate with the spirits rumored to haunt the manor. Sitting in a circle, they hold hands and call out to the other side, their voices echoing through the silent darkness. Suddenly, a chill wind sweeps through the attic, extinguishing the candles and plunging the room into darkness. A sense of dread fills the air as the temperature drops, and the group realizes they've awakened something far more sinister than they bargained for. With a blood-curdling scream, one of the friends is dragged into the shadows by an unseen force, leaving the others paralyzed with fear. In a panic, they flee through the labyrinth and corridors of the manor, desperate to escape the clutches of the vengeful spirits. Just as it seems all hope is lost, They stumble upon a hidden passage leading to freedom. With a burst of adrenaline, they dash through the secret tunnel and emerge into the moonlit night, their lungs burning with exertion as they put distance between themselves and the haunted manor. As they make their way back to the village, the group vows never to speak of their harrowing ordeal. Though the memory of the haunted manor will haunt their dreams for years to come, they take solace in the fact that they survived to see another day. On a dark and stormy night, 3 college friends, Alex, Sam, and Jess, arrived at Blackwood Manor. They planned to spend the night exploring the abandoned mansion, known for its dark history. With a creaking groan, the front door opened. The friends stepped inside, greeted by a grand but decaying foyer. Dust-covered furniture and cobwebs filled the room, and the air smelled of mildew. As they explored the ground floor, they found old portraits with eyes that seemed to follow them. The silence was occasionally broken by the sound of dripping water and the creaking of old wood. In the dining room, the chandelier suddenly swung back and forth, and the temperature dropped. They heard faint whispers, but couldn't tell where they came from. To cover more ground, they decided to split up. Alex and Sam went upstairs while Jess continued exploring the ground floor. The house seemed to grow darker and more oppressive. Upstairs, Alex and Sam found an old nursery. Broken toys were scattered across the floor, and a rocking chair moved back and forth on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Jess found a hidden door leading to the basement. Descending the dark stairs, she felt an increasing sense of dread. In the basement, she saw a shadowy figure standing in the corner. It moved toward her and then vanished. Terrified, Jess ran upstairs and reunited with Alex and Sam. They decided to leave immediately, but when they tried to open the front door, it was locked and wouldn't budge. While searching for another way out, they discovered a hidden passage behind a bookcase. The passage led to a narrow tunnel, which they hoped would lead to safety. As they made their way through the tunnel, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure again, this time more menacing. It reached out with a chilling wail. They ran as fast as they could. The tunnel finally led them outside, far from the manor. They didn't stop until they were safely back in town, vowing never to return. Blackwood Manor remained abandoned and forgotten, a place of nightmares and lost souls. The friends never spoke of that night again, but they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. On a foggy autumn evening, for friends Tom, Rachel, Linda, and James arrived at Elmwood House, an old mansion reputed to be haunted. They had come to investigate the paranormal activities reported by locals. As they approached the mansion, its dark silhouette loomed ominously against the gray sky. The friends pushed open the creaking front door and stepped into the dimly lit foyer. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of mildew was overwhelming. As they ventured further, their footsteps echoed through the empty halls. Portraits of long-deceased residents stared down at them from the walls, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. In the drawing room, they found an old diary on a dusty table. Linda opened it and began to read aloud. The entries spoke of strange noises, unexplained cold spots, and sightings of a ghostly figure. As she read, a cold breeze swept through the room, and the candles flickered. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appeared in the doorway, sending the friends into a panic. Deciding to explore the source of the disturbances, the group descended into the basement. The air grew colder with each step, and the darkness seemed to swallow their flashlight beams. In a corner, they discovered a hidden door. Behind it was a small, dank room filled with old, rusted tools and strange symbols painted on the walls. A sense of dread filled the air. As they examined the symbols, a ghostly figure materialized in the center of the room. It was the spirit of Margaret Elmwood, the mansion's former owner. She revealed that she had been cursed and trapped in the house for centuries. She begged the friends to help her break the curse by finding and destroying a hidden talisman. Determined to help Margaret, the friends split up to search the house for the talisman. Strange phenomena continued to plague them: whispering voices, moving shadows, and unexplained cold spots. Rachel found an old chest in the attic, filled with trinkets and mementos. Among them was a small, ornate box that seemed to pulse with dark energy. Reuniting in the drawing room, the friends opened the box to reveal a sinister-looking talisman. As they prepared to destroy it, the house shook violently, and ghostly figures emerged from the walls, trying to stop them. With a final burst of courage, Tom smashed the talisman, causing a blinding flash of light. The ghostly figures screamed and vanished. The house fell silent, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Margaret's spirit appeared one last time, thanking the friends before disappearing in a swirl of light. The friends left Elmwood House as dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight breaking through the fog. They were exhausted but relieved, having survived the ordeal. As the friends walked away, Tom felt a chill run down his spine. Turning back, he saw a shadowy figure in one of the windows. The curse was broken, but the house still held secrets, and its dark history would never be fully laid to rest. Maya stands at the top of the subway station stairs, peering down into the dimly lit corridor below. The walls are adorned with layers of graffiti, some vibrant and artistic, others faded and ominous. The overhead lights flicker sporadically, casting irregular shadows on the rusted metal steps leading into the depths. Maya adjusts her backpack and camera, taking a deep breath before beginning her descent into the unknown. Maya navigates the winding corridors of the subway station, her footsteps echoing off the tiled walls. The air is cool and stale, carrying whispers of a forgotten era. Graffiti covers almost every surface, depicting faces and abstract shapes that seem to watch her. Every move, old posters peel off in places, revealing glimpses of advertisements from decades past. Maya pauses occasionally to capture the haunting beauty of the decaying station with her camera, each click punctuating the silence of the abandoned passageways. Maya emerges onto the platform, greeted by the oppressive silence of the empty station. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long shadows on the cracked tiles below. Rusted benches line the platform, their surfaces worn and weathered. A faint breeze stirs the air, carrying with it the distant echo of a train approaching. Maya feels a profound sense of isolation as she stands alone on the desolate platform, her camera ready to capture the melancholy of the abandoned space. As Maya waits on the platform, she notices shadows moving along the walls, their shapes shifting in the flickering light. They seem to dance and writhe unnaturally, defying any logical explanation. Maya adjusts her camera settings, trying to capture the elusive play of light and shadow. The shadows twist and elongate, casting eerie patterns that send a chill down Maya's spine. The distant rumble grows louder as a train approaches the platform, its headlights piercing the darkness. Maya hears the screech of brakes as the train comes to a stop, the doors sliding open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, the carriage is dimly lit, casting long shadows across the empty seats. Maya hesitates for a moment before stepping inside, her camera hanging from her neck, ready to document the eerie interior. The train moves through the tunnels, its rhythmic clatter filling the carriage. Maya looks out the scratched window, watching the flickering lights of the tunnel walls rushing past. In the dimness, she hears faint whispers, their words indistinct yet unsettling. The whispers seem to echo through the empty carriage, their source mysterious and elusive. Maya disembarks at an old, seemingly abandoned station, the air heavy with the scent of dampness and decay. She steps cautiously onto the platform, her footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. The station is deserted, with rusted benches and cracked tiles under flickering lights. Maya senses a presence watching her from the shadows, unseen yet palpable in the oppressive atmosphere. As Maya explores further, she encounters a figure standing in the shadows, a silhouette obscured by darkness. She freezes, her heart racing, unsure if the figure is real or a figment of her imagination. The figure remains motionless, watching her with an intensity that sends a chill down Maya's spine. She takes a hesitant step closer, her camera raised, ready to capture the mysterious presence. Show Maya facing the shadowy figure standing in the shadows of the subway station. The figure should be partially obscured, blending into the darkness of the station. The lighting should be dim and atmospheric, with flickering lights casting uncertain shadows around the figure. Maya should be holding her camera, her expression a mix of fear and determination as she confronts the unknown entity. The visual should capture the suspenseful moment of Maya's encounter with the mysterious figure. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, Maya turns and runs, her footsteps echoing through the empty corridors of the subway station. She glances back only once, catching a glimpse of the figure disappearing into the shadows. Maya emerges into the main corridor, sprinting towards the exit as if pursued by unseen forces. She bursts into the open air, gasping for breath and trembling with relief, the echoes of her ordeal fading behind her in the distance. Maya emerges onto the bustling city street, her heart still pounding from the harrowing experience underground. She looks back at the subway entrance, half expecting to see the shadowy figure watching her from the depths. But the station remains silent and still, blending seamlessly into the urban landscape. With a deep breath, Maya continues down the street, haunted by the memory of whispers and shadows, forever changed by her journey into the depths of the underground. *** visual prompt. *** show Maya standing on the city street. Deep within the forest, there lies a path that few dare to tread. Its name whispered in hushed tones, for it is known as the shadowed path, where the veil between worlds grows thin. Sarah, seeking a shortcut through the forest, finds herself at the entrance of the shadowed path. Despite the warnings, she feels an inexplicable pull drawing her forward. With each step, Sarah feels a chill creep down her spine. The air grows thick with anticipation as she ventures further into the heart of the forest, the shadows enveloping her. Suddenly, a dense mist envelops the forest, swallowing Sarah whole. She can barely see her own hand in front of her face, and the feeling of being watched intensifies. From within the swirling mist, ghostly whispers reach out to Sarah, urging her to continue down the shadowed path. She feels a strange compulsion to follow, despite the fear gnawing at her inside. Through the thick mist, Sarah spots the outline of an abandoned cabin. Despite every instinct screaming at her to turn back, she finds herself drawn to explore its dark interior. Inside the cabin, Sarah senses a malevolent presence, its gaze burning into her soul. She knows she is not alone, and terror grips her heart. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, Sarah bolts from the cabin, her heart pounding in her chest. She can feel the presence behind her, its breath hot on her neck as she races through the forest. In a clearing, Sarah confronts the source of the haunting, a shadowy figure cloaked in darkness. She knows she must stand her ground if she is to survive the night. With fear coursing through her veins, Sarah fights tooth and nail against the shadowy figure. Every blow she lands feels like hitting a wall of solid darkness, but she refuses to give up without a fight. Just when all hope seems lost, a blinding light pierces the darkness, banishing the shadowy figure and illuminating the forest with its brilliance. Sarah knows that she has been saved by a force beyond her understanding. As the mist dissipates, Sarah finds herself standing at the edge of the forest, bathed in sunlight. Though shaken by her ordeal, she knows that she has survived the shadowed path, and she will never forget the horrors she encountered within its depths. With one final glance over her shoulder, Sarah walks away from the forest, leaving the haunting of the shadowed path behind her. She knows that she will never be the same after her encounter with the darkness, but she also knows that she is stronger for having faced it. In the heart of the countryside lies the abandoned Thornwood Mansion, its once grand facade now a haunting reminder of the secrets it holds within. A group of friends, seeking thrills on a dare, arrive at Thornwood Mansion, eager to explore its dark corridors and uncover its hidden mysteries. With flashlights in hand, the friends venture into Thornwood Mansion, the air heavy with the scent of decay and the whispers of the past. As night falls, Thornwood Mansion takes on an even more sinister atmosphere, the moonlight filtering through broken windows and casting long, twisting shadows across the floors. Armed with cameras and EVP recorders, the friends set out to capture evidence of the supernatural within Thornwood Mansion, their hearts pounding with anticipation. As they explore the mansion, The friends encounter ghostly apparitions that seem to materialize out of thin air, their mournful cries echoing through the empty halls. In the library, the friends discover clues to Thornwood Mansion's dark past, their fingers tracing the faded pages of forgotten books as they search for ants. A palpable sense of dread grips the friends as they realize they are not alone in Thornwood Mansion, and that something malevolent watches their every move from the darkness. With fear driving them forward, the friends run for their lives through Thornwood Mansion, their hearts pounding in their chests as they desperately try to escape the clutches of the supernatural. In a final, terrifying confrontation, the friends come face to face with the vengeful spirit that haunts Thornwood Mansion, its eyes blazing with fury as it seeks revenge for past wrongs. Armed only with their courage, the friends battle against the vengeful spirit, their screams filling the air as they fight to banish it back to the realm of the dead. As dawn breaks, Thornwood Mansion stands silent and still once more, the darkness lifted and the spirits at peace. The friends may have survived the night, but the memory of their ordeal will haunt them forever. With their ordeal finally over, the friends leave Thornwood Mansion behind, knowing that they have faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. But as they walk away, they can't help but wonder what other secrets lie hidden in the darkness, waiting to be uncovered by unsuspecting souls. Emily stepped off the train onto the deserted platform of the old subway station. It was the last stop of the night, and the flickering overhead lights cast eerie shadows across the cracked tiles. She glanced around, feeling a chill despite the summer heat. The clock on the wall read 11:45 p.m., its ticking the only sound in the oppressive silence. As Emily walked towards the exit, she realized how quiet the station was. No sounds of distant footsteps, no hum of machinery, just a deep, unsettling silence. She noticed a worn bench under a malfunctioning light, its flicker casting strange, moving shadows. She sat down, hoping the next train would come soon, but the silence grew heavier with each passing minute. Emily's eyes were drawn to movement at the far end of the platform. A shadowy figure stood there, just beyond the reach of the dim lights. She squinted, trying to make out details, but the figure remained indistinct. As she watched, it seemed to melt into the darkness of the tunnel, leaving her heart pounding and her breath shallow. Feeling uneasy, Emily decided to walk to the other end of the platform. As she approached the spot where the figure had stood, she noticed a crumpled piece of paper on the ground. She picked it up and smoothed it out, revealing a hastily scribbled message, "Beware the last train." The words sent a chill down her spine. The sound of an approaching train broke the silence, its headlights piercing the darkness of the tunnel. Emily felt a mix of relief and dread as the train pulled into the station, its brakes screeching. The doors opened with a hiss, but the carriage was empty. She hesitated, the warning from the note echoing in her mind, but she stepped inside. Inside the carriage, Emily found herself alone. The lights flickered, and the air was stale. She sat down near the center, her eyes darting to the shadows at the far end of the carriage. The train started moving, and she felt a growing sense of unease, as if unseen eyes were watching her from the darkness. Suddenly, the train screeched to a halt in the middle of a dark tunnel. The lights flickered violently before plunging the carriage into near darkness. Panic surged through Emily as she realized they weren't at a station. The silence was replaced by the sound of distant, echoing footsteps approaching from the rear of the train. Emily's heart pounded as she heard the footsteps getting closer. She bolted from her seat, running through the darkened carriages, her breath coming in short, terrified gasps. The shadows seemed to reach out for her, and she felt an overwhelming sense of being chased by something unseen but very real. She reached the end of the train and turned to face her pursuer. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its form shifting and indistinct. It whispered her name, its voice a chilling echo. Emily backed up against the door, her mind racing for an escape as the figure advanced. Desperation gave Emily strength. She forced open the emergency door and jumped out onto the tracks. The darkness of the tunnel was suffocating, but she ran as fast as she could, her only goal to escape the horror behind her. The sound of her own footsteps echoed loudly, mingling with the still-present whisper of her name. She stumbled, scraping her hands and knees on the rough ground, but she forced herself up and kept running. After what felt like an eternity, Emily saw a faint light ahead. She reached an old, forgotten station, its once vibrant colors now faded and covered in grime. The place seemed abandoned for decades, with broken benches and graffiti-covered walls. She paused, catching her breath, and looked around, hoping for a way out. In the far corner of the station, Emily noticed a small, rusty door partially hidden behind debris. With no other options, she pushed aside the rubble and forced the door open. It led to a narrow, dark corridor, barely wide enough for her to squeeze through. She hesitated, but the sound of the whispering figure behind her spurred her on. Emily found herself in a labyrinth of maintenance tunnels, each one darker and more confusing than the last. The air was damp and musty, and the walls were covered in grime. She tried to navigate the maze, but every turn seemed to lead her deeper into the darkness. The whispers grew louder, echoing off the walls and driving her to the brink of madness. At the heart of the labyrinth, Emily found a small room with a single flickering light. The shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its form now more defined and menacing. It whispered her name, its voice a chilling echo that filled the room. Emily stood her ground, her fear giving way to a desperate determination to confront the nightmare once and for all. As the figure advanced, Emily noticed something familiar in its form. With a sudden clarity, she realized it was a twisted reflection of her own fears and doubts. Summoning all her courage, she spoke to the figure, confronting it with the truth of her inner strength. The shadow wavered, its form beginning to dissipate as Emily's confidence grew. 5 friends, Alice, Ben, Clara, David, and Emma, decided to spend a weekend camping in Blackwood Forest. The forest had a dark history, with rumors of disappearances and ghostly apparitions. Despite the warnings, the thrill of adventure drew them in. They arrived at the forest entrance in the late afternoon. Tall, ancient trees loomed ahead, their branches twisted into eerie shapes. The setting sun cast long shadows, and the air was thick with an unsettling silence. As they stepped into the forest, a sense of foreboding washed over them. After a couple of hours of hiking, they found a small clearing perfect for their campsite. They set up their tents and built a campfire as dusk settled in. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows on the surrounding trees. They shared stories and laughed, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease. Alice suggested they explore the deeper parts of the forest the next day. Ben and Clara were eager, but David and Emma exchanged worried glances. The stories about the forest's dark history lingered in their minds. That night, Emma woke to the sound of whispering voices. She sat up, her heart racing, and strained to listen. The whispers seemed to come from the trees, growing louder and more insistent. She nudged Clara awake, but as soon as Clara opened her eyes, the whispers stopped. Emma decided it must have been her imagination and tried to sleep again. Unseen, a pair of glowing eyes watched the campsite from the shadows, disappearing as quickly as they appeared. The next morning, the friends woke to find strange symbols carved into the trees around their campsite. Clara, fascinated, took pictures while Ben and Alice dismissed them as a prank. David and Emma felt uneasy but agreed to explore further with Clara's encouragement. As they ventured deeper, the forest seemed to close in around them. The air grew colder, and the silence was punctuated by the occasional crack of a twig. They stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin, its windows shattered and the door ajar. Curiosity led them to enter the cabin. Inside, it was dark and musty, with old, decaying furniture scattered about. More symbols were etched into the walls and floor, heightening their sense of dread. In a corner, they found an old journal, its pages filled with frantic, barely legible writing. The journal spoke of a dark presence in the woods, something ancient and malevolent that thrived on fear. The friends exchanged worried glances as the air grew heavier around them. As Clara read from the journal, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. The friends looked at each other in fear. Ben, still skeptical, suggested they leave immediately, but Alice insisted they stick together and understand what was happening. Suddenly, the cabin door slammed shut, the windows darkened, and the temperature dropped. The friends huddled together, feeling an oppressive force closing in. They realized late that the stories were true. They were trapped by something malevolent. Panic set in as they tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder, transforming into guttural chants. The symbols on the walls began to glow with an eerie light. Desperate, Ben found an old axe and started hacking at the door. With a final, desperate swing, the door burst open. They ran into the forest, the chants following them. The trees seemed to close in, turning the forest into a maze. They could hear footsteps behind them, but when they looked back, there was nothing. Exhausted and terrified, the friends found themselves back at their campsite. The fire was still burning, providing a small circle of light. They gathered around it, trying to catch their breath. The whispers now surrounded them, a deafening cacophony. Emma remembered the journal and frantically searched through it, hoping to find a way to stop the entity. She found a passage about a ritual to banish the spirit, but it required a sacrifice. The friends looked at each other, realizing the grim reality of what had to be done. With heavy hearts, they decided that Ben, the skeptic, would stay behind to perform the ritual. He accepted his fate, understanding it was their only chance. Emma handed him the journal, and the others began running towards the edge of the forest. Ben stood by the fire, chanting the words from the journal. The shadows closed in, and the air grew colder. As he completed the ritual, a piercing scream echoed through the woods. The ground shook, and a blinding light enveloped the campsite. The next morning, Alice, Clara, David, and Emma reached the edge of the forest, exhausted but alive. They looked back, but there was no sign of Ben or the glowing light. The forest was silent once more. As they returned to town, they vowed never to speak of what happened. The whispers had stopped, but the memory of that night would haunt them forever. Blackwood Forest remained a quiet place, and the dark, twisted trees stood as silent witnesses to the horrors within.